Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Business Continuity Planning. Today's webinar is number 3 in our Storm Season series, which is being delivered in partnership with Queensland Government, Department of Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning, and RACQ Get Ready Queensland. My name's James Flaherty and I'm your facilitator for today. I'm delighted to welcome Caitlin Bowman from the Department of Tourism, Major Events, Small Business and the Commonwealth Games, who'll take you through today's webinar.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you to our participants for joining us today. My name's Caitlin Bowman and I'm a Customer Experience Officer in the Department of Tourism, Major Events, Small Business and the Commonwealth Games, known as the TESB. My main role here is to manage and deliver the Department's webinar program within Business Online Solutions. The webinar program is one of many online services delivered to business and industry customers through www.business.qld.gov.au. Other services include business and license and permit information, diagnostic tools and quizzes, and information guides on nearly all aspects of managing and running your business. My background, as you can see on your screens there, is quite business focused, and my experience includes business advising, workshops, seminar and webinar presenting and facilitation, business planning and market research, and also business content management. I thank CCIQ for having me here today, and I look forward to shedding some light around business continuity.
Before we start, just some quick tips to get the most out of today's session. We'll be on air for around 45 minutes, and following the main presentation, there's the opportunity to ask questions that we'll try and answer as best we can. You can do that by using the text box on screen, so please do send your questions through for Caitlin, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the session. Following the presentation, we'll also be sending out to everybody who's registered today an email which will contain a link to the slides, a link to additional resources, and a copy of today's webinar recording. We're also using the workbook feature in today's session, so you can download a resource guide and workbook to read along with as we go through the webinar. You can do that by using the Handouts tab on your menu on the right-hand side. Simply click on the file name, download and save to your local machine. Now in Queensland it's inevitable that at some point storm or extreme weather will hit. Just over a year ago I remember being at CCIQ, stood in our main area as the Brisbane hailstorm hit, and we were holding up umbrellas and putting tarps over our computers and equipment to try and preserve them as the water poured in through the ceiling. Thankfully, we had a business continuity plan in place, and that meant that we were up and running the very next day with no loss of service to our customers, all staff being able to access all of our systems and to access the building and the resources that we needed to continue to trade. It's an essential part of your business going forward, particularly in a state like Queensland. So Caitlin, it's over to you to outline how our listeners today can get their businesses planned and prepared in the event of storm season.
Excellent. Thank you very much, James. So today we're going to define resilience and also business continuity planning. We're going to look at the process of the actual planning itself, including prevention, preparedness, response and recovery. We'll then wrap up the important phase of rehearse, maintain and review. So as James mentioned, there will be an opportunity for us to go through questions at the end of the webinar, so please send them through and we look forward to answering them at the end of the webinar. So let's get started. So first and foremost, let's look at the concept of resilience. So during the summer of 2010-2011, much of Queensland was affected by severe flood and weather events. 37 people lost their lives, and all 73 local government areas in Queensland were disaster activated under the Commonwealth State Natural Disaster Relief and Recovery Arrangements. Thousands and thousands of businesses were affected, whether it be directly or indirectly, and it became really apparent that many of these businesses were ill prepared for disaster, and this resulted them in being very slow to recover operations, or even unable to completely recover at all. So disaster resilience is defined by the Queensland Government publication Rebuilding a Stronger, More Resilient Queensland as the capacity to prevent, mitigate, prepare for, respond to and recover from the impact of disasters. Building resilience enhances our ability to minimise the effects of future disaster events on our communities, economy and environment. It also means that we efficiently and effectively cope with the impacts of disaster when they do occur. Okay, so what is a business continuity plan, you ask? It's the Business Continuity Institute as a holistic management process that identifies potential impacts that threaten a particular organisation and provides a framework for building resilience and the capability of an effective response which safeguards the interests of its key stakeholders, reputation, brand, and value-creating activities. Okay, so now we're just going to look at the actual 4 stages in the business continuity planning process. So we've got our prevention. So this is our risk management plan essentially. Then we've got our preparedness, and this covers the business impact analysis. We then move on to response, and this is our incident response plan. And then finally we wrap it up with recovery, and this captures our recovery plan. So we're just going to look at each of these stages and phases in a little more detail. So prevention, this is our risk management. This includes the identification of risks, the assessments of threat to life and property, and ensuring protective measures are in place to reduce potential losses. What is a risk? So a risk is the likelihood of something happening as a result of a hazard or threat and the impact it will have on your business activities. So the risk management process consists of a series of steps that, when undertaken in sequence, will enable continual improvement in decision making. And these are up on your screen now, as you can see. So step 1, this is identify the risks that could have a potential impact on your business. Step 2, analyze the risk to assess their impact. Step 3, evaluate the risk to prioritize their management. Step 4, treat the risks to minimize the impact. And finally, step 5, develop and review your risk management plan. So we're just going to follow these steps in a little bit more detail. So step 1, identify the risks that could potentially have an impact on your business. So these can be both internal and external to your business. They can be hazard-based, so think chemical spills, for instance. They can be uncertainty-based, so think natural disasters, or they can even be associated with opportunities, whether you're taking them up or ignoring them. Businesses often fail to look at the risks broadly enough and tend to consider the more obvious things like fire and flood. But you also need to look at the other risks as well. So you need to ask yourself, what causes an impact? How serious would that impact be on my business and my operations? What's the likelihood of this actually occurring? And can the risk be reduced or even eliminated altogether? So moving on to step 2, this is our analysing the risk process. So you need to separate the minor acceptable risks from major risks, which must be managed more immediately. So this involves deciding on the relationship between the likelihood, and this is which also involves the frequency, and the consequences, which also includes the impacts of the risks that you've identified. The result is a level of risk, which is often described as low, medium, high, or very high. So the risk management can be documented in a matrix similar to what's on your screen now, which has been taken from our workbook. And each risk needs to go through this analytical stage. And it's really, really important. So you need to get the consequences and times it by the likelihood of it actually occurring to get that risk analysis. And that, as I said, needs to be done for every potential risk, and that goes into a lot more detail in your workbook. So step 3, evaluating your risks. And you need to, once they're evaluated, you also need to prioritise their management. You need to evaluate your risks to determine whether or not they're acceptable or require treatment. So those risks that are not considered acceptable or tolerable should be treated and or controlled. And this moves us into our next step, which is actually treating the risks themselves. So they can be treated in the ways that are listed up on your screen. So your option 1 is to avoid the risk. So make the decision to discontinue the activities or processes given rise to that particular risk. Next, your option could be to reduce the risk. So take measures to reduce the likelihood or the impact of the risk. Next option is to share the risk. So this is to transfer or share a portion of the risk to reduce it. For an example of this is insurance. So that's one method of sharing the risk. And then finally, your last option is just to retain or accept the risk. So make a decision not to make any particular action due to a cost-benefit analysis. Okay, so wrapping up with step number 5. So after heading through the previous 4 steps that I've just gone through with you, you'll need to put together a risk management plan, which is also explored a lot more in your workbook. But what you have on your screen now has been taken from the workbook's case study, which is just on a coffee shop, just to give you a bit of an idea of what a risk management plan should look like. So if we look here, the first risk that has been identified is a loss of production. So the likelihood of this is happening has been identified as low. However, the consequences are very high and the priority is at a medium level. As you can see there, the case study has identified the preventative actions and any sort of contingency plans associated with this particular risk. So that's just an example. Go through the case study in your workbook and it'll enable you to get a bit of an idea of what your risk management plan should look like for your business. Okay, so moving on to preparedness. What can you do to prepare? So preparedness involves taking action prior to an incident even occurring, and this will ensure an effective response and recovery process. Being proactive and planning for the likelihood of an event that has the capacity to interrupt your business operations. A personal commitment to dispel any thoughts that it won't happen to me. And finally, preparedness is all about being proactive and doing that planning. Okay, so now we're going to move into the business impact analysis phase. So the purpose of a business impact analysis is to gather information to determine basic recovery requirements for your business in the event of a particular disaster or crisis. It will show you which parts of your business will be most likely affected by a particular incident and what effect it will have on the business operations as a whole. So a business impact analysis is used to establish what your critical business activities are, the resources required to support each of these activities, and the impact of ceasing to perform these activities. So your workbook will go into this phase in a lot more detail, but it's really, really important to conduct a business impact analysis and identify those critical business activities. So what's the bare minimum you need in order to restore basic operations at your business? So that's your critical business activities. You know, that's not including things like, you know, photocopying pamphlets or flyers. It's the really nitty-gritty stuff that you need to have up and running as quickly as possible to ensure your clients' needs are met. Okay, so moving on to the response. How will you and your team respond? So the response phase occurs as the incident happens and immediately after. It covers actions taken to respond to a particular incident in terms of containment, limiting the loss of life, and property preventing incident escalation. So put together an incident response team with the relevant expertise to understand and evaluate the specific crisis and come up with relevant solutions that can help your business recover and restore activities. So a typical incident response team should include obviously a team leader and a response team, assessors, your spokesperson, and any other sort of relevant parties. So think insurance, representatives, government contacts, agency contacts, and industry associations. Okay, so moving on to your incident response plan. This plan should be simple. Although you'll never be able to plan your response in detail for every possible event, remember that people need to be able to react very quickly in an emergency. So some examples of what should be included in your incident response plan are up on your screen now. So they include checklists. Be sure that these are easy to follow and aren't just stored on site. Make sure that they're stored elsewhere so they're not heavily reliant on the actual office site. A list of personnel who have the authority to invoke the plan and under what circumstances this should occur. So include your evacuation plan here as well. An event log. Google Docs or any other sort of cloud cloud computing systems, your strategic communications and contacts with your stakeholders. Have a Go Pack, which is essentially an emergency kit containing critical documents and equipment which can be picked up and easily carried off-site in the case of a disaster or a critical event. A list of the response team members and backups, as well as a detailed explanation of their roles and responsibilities and functions in response to a particular crisis, and clear directions and instructions for the first critical hour after that crisis hits. Your workbook will cover this in a lot more detail, so be sure to have an incident response plan ready at the go to ensure that you can respond very quickly after an event. Okay, so moving on to mobilising our response effectively. This is so important. So you will need to define the problem and determine a strategy accordingly. Respond quickly and effectively. So the first hour is absolutely vital. Understand the changing situation and manage information effectively. Assume the worst case and also assume that the situation will continue to escalate. Cultivate and call on subject matter experts as well as allies if needed. Consider using Twitter and the use of hashtags as well as other social media channels. So the Twitter screenshot that you have on your screen there was taken during the height of the Queensland floods and shows just how powerful social media can be during a natural disaster, or any disaster for that instance. But by using the hashtag Queensland floods, organisations could not only inform their stakeholders of the responses, but also keep informed of current developments. So just a hands up now, who here has already got social media accounts for their business? Some of you, not many. Okay, so it's a really good idea to consider this not only as a part of your business plan and your overall marketing strategy and branding strategy, but it should also be considered as part of your business continuity planning process. It's a really good idea to use social media when keeping your stakeholders informed of your recovery process. And we saw this a lot in the 2011 floods. Businesses were able to keep not only their customers in the loop, but also their supply chain network in the loop in regards to their recovery process, as well as relevant agencies and industry contacts. That being said, also using the use of hashtags, businesses were able to be kept in the loop and informed of any sort of government assistance that was available during that crisis. So social media is a very, very powerful tool that can't be underestimated or ignored even as a part of your continuity process. It really needs to be an integral part, particularly in the mobilising response phase. Okay, so moving on to recovery. How will you bounce back? So recovery can be broadly divided into resumption. So this is your continuity of business activities, and restoration. So this is your recovery of resources. So recovery planning is a proactive approach to getting the business back on track in the shortest possible time after such an event. It's vital that that recovery is really, this planning process and this phase is taken very, very seriously. So your recovery plan should include strategies to recover your business activities in the quickest possible time. What resources are required to recover your operations? Your previously identified recovery time objectives, and this is gone through in a lot more detail in your workbook. And then the people who have responsibility for each role. As with all plans, the more work done and during the planning process, the better your chances of business recovery as well. So that's really important as well. So the more planning you do now, the higher chance your business is going to recover and hopefully continue to grow and flourish as opposed to failing. So once the incident or disaster is over, there's a number of steps that you as a business owner need to take. So you need to assess the extent of the damage caused. So this includes injuries, damage to your reputation, damage to your buildings and equipment. Be sure to take as many photographs as possible. This is really, really important. Conduct a critical incident debrief. Keep staff informed as well. That's also very important. Continue to communicate with all of your key stakeholders, and this is, as I said, you can tap into social media here and use that as a really powerful way to keep communication open and encourage that two-way communication with your stakeholders as well. So not just you telling them what's going on, but them checking in with you as well. So use that two-way communication that social media offers. Ensure staff understand and collectively work towards your recovery efforts as well. Don't forget the human aspect of a crisis and recovery as well. So be sure that you're well aware of the situations of your employees as well. They might have been heavily impacted by this particular crisis or event. So be sure to be aware of your employees' mental health, as well as your own mental health as well. So you do need to look after yourself. You can get sort of overrun by the recovery process and forget to look after your own health. So that's really important also. Finally, consider any learnings. What went well, what didn't? What key lessons were learnt? What changes need to be made to our current business processes? And then wrapping up, once you've gone through that whole process, you then need to update obviously your business continuity plan. Okay, so moving on. Remember, opportunity. Excuse me. So when disaster strikes a particular business, one thing's true: the situation's changed. But if we look at the silver lining, where there is change, there can be opportunity. So look at the things up on your screen now. Consider, has the market changed? Is there an opportunity to attract new customers? Is there an opportunity to diversify or change or alter your product, service, or what you're offering? Do you need to support existing customers? Reputation. Is there an opportunity for community service? Look at your strategic comms or media engagement opportunities. So, for instance, if your business has provided integral support for recovery efforts for some community groups in your particular area, be sure to let the public know that. Be sure to let your stakeholders know that and incorporate that into your marketing strategy, because that's really positive, a positive outcome and positive marketing that your business can receive, on the end of a crisis or event. So, as I said, the crisis is, it's not fun and it's hard to get through, but it's also really good to look at the silver lining and see the opportunities that this might provide. Okay, and all plans can't be considered reliable until they have been tested and proven workable. So testing involves validating plans, rehearsing with key staff, and testing your systems. So you really need to get your staff on board with this process, and they need to be involved. They need to have a very good understanding of your recovery process and your business continuity plan. You need to have employee buy-in. They also need to provide feedback as well, because they're going to be on the ground helping you and your business recover and restore those critical business activities. So you need to get their feedback and their involvement as well. Something that you think that may be integral to recovery may not be in their eyes, and so their feedback, they're on the ground, and their feedback's really important. So definitely include that in the maintenance and review phase. So I can't emphasize how important planning is, and it is a long-term commitment. It's not just something you do once or twice and then it gets put into a top drawer and forgotten about. To maximize your chances of success, you need to adopt a continuous and regular planning cycle that keep your plans up to date. And this is all of your plans. So not just your business plan, but not just your business continuity plan, but also your business plan as well. And they need to go hand in hand. So definitely ensure that you've got a process in place in your business to make sure that they're continuously being looked at, reviewed, and maintained. Remember, your situation is always going to be changing, whether that be your location or the time of year, the seasons. Everything, your situation and your environment is constantly changing, and all your plans need to reflect those changes in your environment. So continuous improvement is about making constant enhancements towards excellence. So that's a really good point to remember. Businesses who are serious about continuous improvement and review their plans to see what they can learn from them is really, really important. So be sure to use the past to improve the future. Okay, so that wraps up today's webinar. So today I've tried to give you a fundamental understanding and a basic understanding of what is business continuity and why it's so important for your organisation. So I'll now direct your attention to our website. It contains a range of information and tools on this particular topic. We have a downloadable template, so be sure to check that out. We also have plenty of online guides surrounding this topic as well. So, and we also break it down to disaster-specific events as well. So have a look at that. If you do find that you're still feeling a bit daunted by the whole subject, you can definitely go online and on our website and be able to sort of find out a bit more information and go into each element of the business continuity planning process in a lot more detail. And as James mentioned, you will receive the workbook after this webinar as well. And finally, I'll direct your attention there to our Facebook and Twitter accounts. As mentioned, social media is such a powerful tool in the business continuity space. Be sure to head over and like our Facebook page and our Twitter page in the chance of a particular crisis or event. We definitely make sure there's plenty of updates via our social media channels in regards to those events, whether there's government assistance available or not. So be sure to check them out as well. And then finally, wrapping up with our YouTube channel, we have plenty of resources available on there as well. So I recommend that you have a look in regards to that. We've got a lot of pre-recorded webinars on there, and some of them do cover the business continuity space as well. So have a squiz at those. And I'll just pass you back to James for some question time. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Caitlin. Time now for our questions. We've had a few come through, but please do use the panel on screen to send through any questions that you have, and we'll answer them as best we can. So the first question is, how often should a business review their business continuity plan?
Okay, thanks, James, and that's a great question. Similar to that, as I mentioned, similar to that of a business plan, a business continuity plan should be a living, breathing document, and so it's not just something you pop in, you do once and you pop in your top drawer and you forget about it. So the document should be reviewed and emergency procedures practiced and communicated with staff members at least once a year. And again, I can't emphasize the importance of having your staff members on board. It's really, really important to have their input and their buy-in, as well as them understand of what their responsibilities are in the business continuity plan. So that's really, really important. So as I said, probably once a year, similar to that of your business plan. But remember, as I said, if your situation changes, for instance, you have an office relocation or expansion, or you've got new staff on board, you know, those staff need to be inducted and they need to understand the business continuity process as well, what's their responsibility during a recovery process. So if your situation changes, if you get more staff, if you've moved locations, if you expand your offices, so if you've got your head office in one particular area and then you branch out and open a new office, you're going to have a business continuity plan in place for that particular location as well. So that may happen more than once a year, and your plan needs to be updated more than once a year if your situation changes. So if it does, it needs to be included and reflective in your plan. Thanks, James.
Where can a business find a copy or a template for a business continuity plan?
As mentioned, we do have one of them available via the Business and Industry portal, and I'll be sure that we include that link directly in the follow-up email that you'll receive this afternoon. It's just a basic Word template, so essentially you fill in the gaps and you have a basic business continuity plan, but be sure that you may need to alter this slightly depending on your product or service offering as well as your location.
Are there any resources available to help a business assess the risks that they face within their business?
Yeah, so in your workbook, we do go through that risk analysis phase. That's really, really important element of your business continuity planning process. So going through and helping you, if you use the case study in there, that might really help you get a bit more of an understanding of what an actual risk is in your business. It can be quite a daunting process. So if you look at that case study, I recommend that you go there first, have a squiz at that, see, because it's a coffee shop, so it's quite a broad type business, so it'll be able to give you a bit of an idea what a potential risk could be, and what's the likelihood of it occurring. So once you get a bit of a flow and a bit of an understanding of what those risks are, you should be able to be easily identify the ones that are particular relevant to your business. Thanks, James.
Fantastic. That's all the questions we've had through today. So thank you to everybody who has sent questions through to us.
Excellent, thank you. So we're going to be, before you log off today, you will receive a pop-up survey. So that's going to come up on your screen as you exit the webinar. So please give us your feedback, offer us any sort of areas in need of improvement, but also any sort of topics that you'd like us to look into in the future. And once again, thank you CCIQ for having me today, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come along and listen to me today. And thank you, James.
Yeah, just to echo that, thanks to everybody who attended today. On behalf of CCIQ, thanks to Caitlin Bowman from the Department of Tourism, Major Events, Small Business and the Commonwealth Games. Special thanks to our partners for storm season, the Queensland Government, Department of Infrastructure, Local Government and Planning, and RACQ Get Ready Queensland for supporting the storm season series and initiative. You can find out more information and resources to help your business get ready for storm season by heading to www.cciq.com.au/storm season. And don't forget, we've got 2 more webinars coming up in the series. Tomorrow at 4, we're joined by a panel of experts to talk best practice for storm season preparedness that they've seen around the state. And on Thursday at noon, we're talking employees and staff management. So in the event of a storm or a shutdown or something that impacts on your business, how do you go about managing your workforce to be fair to you and to your business? You can sign up for both webinars at cciq.com.au/events. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you on another webinar in the future. Thank you.